Hi, so welcome back to week 3. Or my chair is stuck. Um, we are on summer watch with some Japanese aesthetics. It's based on the Whole Seed Catalog 2026. Unfortunately, the catalog is hard to find. Maybe you can find it on eBay. But if not, I'm happy to try and post the emails, the pictures when the recordings go up. So hopefully you can follow along, and I will pin the images so the images will be a little bit bigger. So we will be working with the focus is Loesia. It's basically on page 245. And another name for it is bitter root. It's a beautiful little picture. It basically grows in rock gardens, mainly on the West Coast, but I also looked it up and it appears in Japanese gardens in Japan and around the world. It's a rock or low growing plant that can be potted. So I thought it was really pretty. And I thought the way the Whole Seed Catalog presented it will let us cover some different principles that I want to talk about first before we get started. So this plant, just so you know, basically is around April through May. It may rebloom in summer. It's great for in Florida as well. It has vibrant contrasting colors, pink, yellow, and white. And the foliage, the leaves are kind of like a succulent leaf. What I like about it is it's resilient and it has a sense of naturalness, which in Shizan, uh, the aesthetic, it means kind of it works with nature. It's natural, it's not forced. So I want to share some principles with you. I am following a photographer who talks a lot about how he's applied his principles to his photography and other things. And his name is jensisu.com or Joshua Smith. And he has a blog called Shizen Style. And I'm really taking a lot away from his stuff. If you don't know me well, I love Asian influence things. A lot of times, obviously, it's in my work. And I love the practice of some of their aesthetics and principles, which come from Zen, Buddhism, and Shintoism. So last week, um, when we covered the cosmos, which I haven't posted yet, but will soon be up, we talked about empty space. Relating that to art, you can see in this image, empty space allows the viewer's mind to settle and wander and breathe, where in Western art, a lot of times it's very busy. And I love this principle. So when you're exploring your artwork, what can you take away and what can you leave to make it your own? It's the same with Japanese gardens. But the thing that he spoke about that I share in my classes often is the reason most people take art classes is they want to learn techniques. They want to practice them and get better. And then the naturalist process comes through us after we have some of these tools to use and be creative with. And he talks about it, and I'm quoting him right now, spontaneous spontaneous insight is built upon experience and incubation or time. When we let our subconscious connect the dots, we link several ideas together better to create something original and new. So often I have students who come in my classes and they want that spontaneous brushstroke work in their artwork. It goes back to artists who studied classical art and wanted to abstract from it. So I want you to think about when we start practicing this next piece, how we can abstract, take away, simplify, make it more natural, maybe less details, maybe brush strokes. Think about that. And through repeated action and effort, we will have a determination that this notion of sudden illumination from practice. So I hope that makes sense. I will get better at expressing some of these ideas. But what it made me think of when I first was starting with the cameras is I started putting things all over the cameras, and how busy this may seem to you when you first look at it. That's the same principles when we're painting or drawing a piece. What we choose to put into our images is a choice. Maybe we don't need everything, especially if we're looking at a photograph or we're in plein air and we're looking at a beautiful landscape. Maybe I'm nature journaling and I'm choosing what I want to draw. So when I take away these extra things, we have time to explore the image and get curious about it. So I'm going to put this aside now and let's get into our project. So here's the whole seed catalog. And here is the image that I chose. I thought I was able to save some of the images on the Zoom link so you can check it. If not, when I do post the video, hopefully I can put that in there for you to look at it. So if you look at this image, it's a beautiful image. It has flowers. It has 3 pots with different colors of flowers. So the image that I decided to work with became this. And you can see that as an artist, I cropped it and I took out some of the bottom flowers. I may put them around the image, but I decided to leave a few just popping up. And what I liked about this, the closer view, was that we get the texture of the pots. We get what we call the space, the negative and positive space around these flowers. So I thought as we start, I'm going to move this aside so there's more room. I'm in my sketchbook and I drew a really rough sketch. So if you want to follow along with me, get your pencil. And I thought it would be fun for us to kind of just try and put some things on the page and get a nice idea of what we may want to paint and draw. So while I'm drawing it, and the measurements may be slightly off, I get a feeling of where things were going. Now, sometimes I talk about that often, is sometimes when I'm planning a piece, I might draw what they call thumbnail sketches, and I might make them very small and sketch things if I wanted to change on the paper. So maybe on one of them, I'd only put 2 pots and do something else in the space. Here I have the 3 pots, and it gives me an idea of how to change and alter the space. And then here, if I kind of just put in the shapes of maybe the flowers by ovals or circles, I get an idea of how my composition is going to work. So here, now if I change the proportions of the original, where I think this is a little bit, maybe I would cut off a little bit here to make it uh, closer to what I'm seeing. And it's always great to draw in things, and then I can start putting in, let's see. But I think when we're learning and we're painting, sometimes it's kind of hard to learn drawing and painting at the same time. So often what I teach is to use what I call graphite transfer paper. It comes in rolls, it comes in sections. I like the Cyril brand. And basically what I would do is either take a pencil or a pen and transfer it, or I use an embossing tool that have different small little silver balls on the end, and then you press into the paper, and when you lift it, so the dark side stays up, the light side is the loose graphite, and when I lift it up, I have an image. So on this image, I simplified it because I want this to be a little bit looser and I want us to have fun painting it and exploring it. So hopefully you spent a few minutes trying to sketch and draw, or you had time to draw the image. And mine is really loose. I put the pots in a little bit of the indication of the edge. And we're going to paint real loosely these pots. And I want you to be conscious of, like we talked about, the space, the negative space, and the placement. And is there anything that you're going to choose to leave out or not? I will be using some white gouache to make the light pink. If you prefer, you can just use plain watercolors and dilute whatever you're doing. So I'm going to start with the pot, and I'm going to use my round brush. I have an 8. You can use a bigger brush, but that should be fine. So I see it, it's kind of like a burnt sienna color, the pot. And then there's, it's lighter. There might be some chocolate brown, obviously. So I'm going to start there. And usually what I do is I activate my watercolors with a spritz. So I'm just going to move this so you can see it, but I don't think I'll be able to get this. So I use a palette that I've been teaching for years called 6 to 8 tubes. And basically I can get almost any color that I want by mixing the colors. There are a couple extras on here, but the palette has 2 yellows, 2 reds, 2 blues, and it also includes burnt sienna and Payne's gray. So if you look at the pot, I'm going to wet it and just put some water. Now this is a Stillman and Bird sketchbook. It's the Epsilon. It's made for mixed media. So I don't overwater, but I let the water in this case, which is wet on wet, kind of move. And I'm keeping it rather light. So when I'm mixing, I take the paint out of the well, move it to the side, and make it fluid with water. Um, let's see. So I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to go ahead and fill in the pots with this. And I do have an artist tape around my edges just because I think it's easier for you to see it. And while it's drying, now often when watercolor butts up to two spots, I like to wait for it to dry because what will happen is the water and the paint will be drawn to each other. So I'm going to take my little handy heated craft tool and dry this layer right now so that I can put the pot in the back, which actually looks a little bit darker. But let's start there. This just takes a second. You can use a hair dryer as well, but it just dries super fast. And if I want it to be wet on wet, where the colors blend, which you may see me doing. So my brush is dirty and it is, so make sure your brush is clean when you switch paints through this process, unless you want them to deliberately mingle. There we go. So we kind of have that. You see, it already kind of started bleeding. So I'm going to try that again. It really takes a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some ultramarine blue to my burnt sienna, just in kind of a corner area. I'm actually going to add a little bit more to it. So you can see it's a much richer chocolate brown color. So we have this color, and then we have the burnt sienna. So you can see the difference in the color. I put that there to kind of dry. So along the edge, but not the exact edge, I kind of left a little space because there's that little bit of pottery sticking out, and I'm going to blot. And then the paper is now dry because we dried it. And I'm going to lift this back because this side is a little bit lighter. I put a little bit more. And you see, I just lost that edge. So I'm going to take a smaller brush. This one is a 6 with a really good point. These are my favorite brushes. Are called Velvet Touch. And lifting it while it hasn't dried is great. So I have to be conscious of that when I'm painting. So my brush is dry right now with no water in it. And when the brush is dry, I can kind of drag it and it will give me kind of a more textured feeling. Now, underneath it, there's like some white. What I can also do is lift it with my brush or take some what I call Mr. Clean sponges. This one has a little green on it. And I cut them into pieces, and you could blot it with a paper towel, but I really like these little sponges. And then I can go ahead and small, when it's small areas, Sometimes you'll notice I won't add water. I'll just paint. Sometimes my brush will be wet. And sometimes it's not what I want the first time. So that's a little bit of paint. So I'm gonna kind of push it back and lift it a little bit because that edge is going to be covered with the dirt and the darkness, so it's okay. But if you have hard edges like this, you can soften that with just pure water. So I'm going to go in that and soften the edge a little bit. So now I'm taking some Payne's gray, or you can add ultramarine blue to make that puddle a little bit deeper. So what I like about Payne's gray is it leans a little bit towards blue. So I'm gonna adjust, this brush is a little too small, so I'm gonna go back to a little bit bigger brush, and I am going to lay in some of that dirt. And of course, I need to watch my edges if. So I just took some water and I'm just lifting it because it has a much bigger rim. And then I can always dab in some of the other browns, is one way. Sometimes I like to do that. And when it dries, I can add more. So that's a good start. And then underneath this pot, I can indicate a light glaze of that dark mixture. And later I can put in some texturing like this when it dries, but if it's too wet, you might have to wait. So we call that glazing and we let it dry and then we put in. So I might as well add at least this corner here, um, and add the dirt. And it starts giving me um, the space. And it's a good idea to kind of recheck the rim. Is my rim looking somewhat even around it? Let's see, I have a leaf kind of at the edge, but there's a little bit of dirt here. So I won't put too much because the way I drew it and the way it's on the photo. So I'm just gonna soften it with a little bit of water and bring that in. So if you look at the rim of this pot on the left, it has some darkness underneath it. And so I'm going to go with the medium brown and take out some of the water that's in there. And it's kind of more like a broken line. So I'm going to put that in a little bit and then clean my brush and maybe push some of it up a little bit. Oops. Sometimes if the brush isn't one, it separates and we don't want that. So I'm just kind of softening it right now. And the other brush that I really love is my shader. And this is a Velvet Touch Chisel Blender 2 by Princeton. And it's just great because I can go under there with just a little bit of water and I can soften it. So um, since it's coming up high, I'm going on the inside of the line. and make sure you wipe it off of a paper towel. I could even lift in between, if you want to get kind of like that spacing or that the colorization on there. And I can do that also on this pot in the back. There's like a much darker rim here. And it's almost like that really dark, dark line when we added the Payne's Gray. So let's just take it. It has a little bit of water, but I like that I kept some of that white in there. And sometimes it's just hard to see it at first. So I'm going to take my brush on its side and it's pretty dry. So I just wet it and I'm going to take it again and I'm going to just kind of drag the paint a little bit. So if this is hard edge, maybe soften it a little bit. And sometimes I'll pull the extra paint down. Depends what you feel comfortable with. But careful, like it was lifting, so I don't want it to lift, but I do like the texture. Now on this piece, it's either the pot, but it's a little bit darker than burnt sienna. So it's almost like, hopefully you can see it, almost like an oval. So I'm going to start with another layer. It's dry. And I'm going to kind of brush in. And then again, look at the negative space around it. So you can kind of tell measurement. And I'm just taking the brush, wetting it a little, and moving the paint around. And you can decide if there's enough paint on there. And then I'm going to go into that next step puddle and kind of paint with that and not make it so even because we kind of want that pottery look. Hopefully and I want to kind of make that edge a little bit uneven, not too perfect. It's actually a little uh not jagged, but just so you can see it. So I'm going to save the rim for a little bit. And if it's wet, I would let it dry, but when it's dry, you can take the shader if you want, and you can clean up the edges. So let's put in some of the leaves, and then let's do some flowers. So that way we have time to do that. So a bigger brush would probably be better with the flowers. So I am going to take my cool red and I'm going to make a red violet. So you could take ultramarine and that always gives me um great color until you get it where you want it. So let's see. So maybe with a little water, let me thin it out. You'll be able to see kind of that color. I think that is pretty darn close to it. Now on the lower leads, it looks like there's some white. So maybe what I would do is I could put in some opaque white at the end just to make it simple. Like if I was seeing these flowers and I was journaling, I wouldn't be taking time out in the field. So just to kind of make some points, you can just try and press down to make some droplets. Um, so you can try just like pushing down, making two strokes, whatever works for you at this point. So I have the outline, so I'm just gonna dab in and kind of just let um the brush is filled with paint, but I'm gonna see what happens when it may start to lose paint. And I can't see all the details, but by leaving a little bit of white in between is really kind of nice with watercolors, especially when it's kind of spontaneous. So some of these leaves look like, I mean, petals look like they're kind of together. So I have these little guidelines that I drew just following that. So like I could come in and shape them if you like. So we need to connect this one. If you have too much space, right, you can add what you need. Now, sometimes when I change the color, I do see some red in it. So while it's wet, um, I can drop in, depending on what you see. I'm putting some warm red on there and just to drop it in a little bit. That's a lot for these little petals, but I can just drop that in while it's wet. Now, if it's dry, maybe, your brush, but like not everywhere, just to kind of pop the color. So just kind of press it in so it's not a really harsh edge. And so I have one more here. And you could pick any colors that you wanted. Um, you can leave out. We were talking about that earlier. Um, so on this one, I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it because it's a little bit deeper back here, um, because of maybe the shadowing. If there's too much paint, just like lift it up. Maybe drop in some down here. So it gives us a little variation. If you wanted to, um, there's a flower back here on the far left. So I'm just kind of following how I see the shape. And I can keep it light right now, and later I can add some more. So on this flower, it's kind of reddish. I'm seeing the warm red and the cool red together. So you can see the two. And I'm going to start with the warmer red, which kind of butts up to these flowers. And, you could also probably um, and maybe leave a little center there. So I'm going to mix a little bit of that to make it a little bit darker. Yeah, maybe it was a little too dark. Maybe I will take the cool red, which has more blue in it. Let's see. But you can always add some of that ultramarine to it to change it. And then it kind of sets it back. Now the one back here is much deeper. Let's get some. So this is when I like my other brushes, and sometimes I would use my sumi painting brushes for something like this if I was just doing some brush strokes. Uh, depends on my mood. So maybe mix up the colors back here. It seems like got a little bit cooler maybe, or you can add some cooler colors, light, change it up a little bit. So what we're doing is we're creating with the darks and lights of just these colors some distance. And I've got that nice feel. Now the centers are kind of like this one has some yellow and orange in it. So by adding the yellow on top of that, it's going to go a little bit more yellow. So that just pops. It might be a little bit too much. I can see it. But look at the colors. What do you see? Like this one kind of looks brown, but it could be the lighting as well. So that kind of went really brownish looking on the paper. So let's see, let's take some, and if it's dry, I can kind of maybe just dab in and look to see the way it's facing. That's always a good view, is to show difference. Oh, a little bit too much. And this one I'm going to use some green. So you can mix one of your warm yellows with your warm blue to get olive green. I have sap green handy. So that was wet. So be careful if you've got a lot of paint. Now sometimes it's fun to get it to bleed. So I'm just kind of popping in. Sometimes I just take my finger to blot. This looks like it's the back side of that. And I'm going to add a little bit more yellow. It's still wet. We'll let that dry. But it gives us a little bit of color, a little bit of texture. This looks a little deeper. And now for the very pale, um, the pale pink. So I would use a gouache. So these are my gouaches. If you're not a purist, and I have a light pink and I can mix it with white. If not, you could take your cool red or a magenta and you can mix it with white. And for me, that's what I'm going to do. So I activate the paint because gouache really needs water. So I won't hold it over the painting, but I'm going to activate the paints. And if you're not familiar with gouache, it's actually a watercolor and they come in, sometimes if it's acrylic gouache, you can't reactivate it. These paints can be reactivated so I can lift them and they always lift once they're wet. So you don't want to fuss too much with it. But I've got the pink and I'm going to put it here. So a good amount because there's a bunch of flowers. And then I'm going to soften it a little bit on one side with a little bit of the gouache paint. You could also take your Doc Martin white bleed proof. So I've got two pinks basically. And I'm just going to start creating these petals. And they're a little bit more oval. They remind me a little bit of a cherry blossom, but they're the same flower we were painting. So that one just looked a little. So I'm indicating these, and I'm going to vary the pinks a little bit. This one seems white, a little bit lighter. Most of them are really pale. And watch for your spacing. So this looks, as it goes to the right, these flowers are much lighter. Now this one is a little foreshortened, so the petals on the bottom are a little bit longer. But I'm just going to kind of tuck it and imply it. Ones in the back have a little bit of some purple. So if you have some purple watercolor, you can mix that in. I'm just grabbed a little bit of the gouache because there's that shadow. Now I'm going to go back to pink and add some water. And then we'll get into the leaves so that way we can get everything in there. And then you'll be able to take this to the level that you want. And if you don't like it so pale, you can add some more pink to it. Oh, okay. So notice that the green in the middle is a brighter green. This one's more olivey and has more blue greens in it. So it's important to see those things. So I'm going to go ahead and we are going to mix. I'm going to turn my palette around. And for the more olive green, I'll probably use some sap green, but I want to show you cleaning off my palette here with all this splattering. So I'm going to start with a cool green, and I would take both. I would take my azo, which is my cool yellow, and I would take my cool blue, which mine is a phthalo, with a little bit at a time. Let's see. I want you to be able to see this, but let's move the picture over. So I did see some light green in the mix, and I'm going to make a second puddle and make it a little bit deeper. And then that way I have it, and I can play with both greens. So that one maybe, if you have too much water on your brush, this has a lot of water. Let's see. I like that it's slightly lighter. It looks dark on the screen, but trust me, it's lighter. So what I like about the leaves on the left is they're more squiggly, and it makes it great for a brush. So I start at the tip and push down. So if you've done any folk art painting, if you've done any Asian painting with a sumi brush, and all I do is it's the pressure of the brush. Um, when I'm pushing down or lifting up. So remember, we're kind of exploring, and you don't have to be super exact like the last couple pictures. I want you to be able to just paint real freely. And I'm just using a watercolor brush, but if you have specialty brushes, they're really quite fun to use. Now, I haven't there's some deep green in the center. Um, let's see what happens. We could take our warm green and let's deepen it a little bit. So that was sap green with a little ultramarine blue to make it a little deeper. And if you look at the insides are a little bit deeper. So I'm just kind of painting to give it a little bit of contrast in there. Maybe you want it on an edge. And it looks red inside at the bottom that the leaves are kind of coming this way. So you would kind of see the back end of them. And I'm going to take a little red and put that on top. That's what I see. It could be the lighting. I'm not sure. But we're indicating it. This one looks like it's a little higher. Let's see. So if your paint is kind of watery like mine, careful of um, don't add more water to it. So I'm going to let that kind of sit a little bit. And then it seems like there's kind of another leaf here. You can contrast it by using your warmer green. And then there's a big darker green leaf that's going to be coming out of this area. So it has kind of a jagged edge. So I kind of just drew it. I want to fix this because it doesn't look so nice. Oops. So I can clean that up later. There's a big hole in here, so I need to, let's see, put some more back here. There, just a little bit. And let's kind of swipe this one with the side of the brush. So these kind of have a interesting leaf. Um, Looks a little bit different than the first ones, maybe because they're curling around. See. So remember contrast light against dark. So if you see that it's lighter, put the dark inside and you can edge it with even the really light green, which we haven't even really used. So on this one, it definitely has some yellow green on top. So now it's a little bit too much. So I'm just going to just blot it out a little bit. And I can just add that. So we're starting to get the feeling. This has more green in it. So let's see. Yeah. And when it's dry, I can play with it. I also want to go back and drop in some darks. I can mix whatever on my palette, and I can even tuck it in a little bit too. So I always like to indicate the dark, but it doesn't mean I'm going to go that dark. Gives me, because then I have to lift it. Um, oops. Careful of the edge. And if it's a hard edge, clean that brush and just soften it a little bit. You can take some of the paint if there's a lot, and sometimes I just kind of move it around. And looking at the center, it's almost like a purple. So I'm going to just use what's on my palette. And oops, uh, lift that up. So when it's fresh and wet, that's when you can lift nicely. So that just gave it a little bit of color, a couple dabs. Great. Now I can see like what does it need? Go back here, get that darker. That became brave, and I dropped that in to make it darker. So maybe it looks more like a shadow. I don't know. So there's a lot of little things that I can do to build build up the painting. Definitely needs a stem. Um, Now we want to make sure that flowers are attached. If they don't look part of it, make sure you put some stems in, like these up here. And then obviously to finish that. So I will finish this and post it with the video. So, you'll be able to check on YouTube channel, Elaine M. Bergstrom. There is an author, so be careful you find me. And then if you go to videos, it should click on the top video. The newest is always at the top. And hopefully I can add the photographs if you want to paint along, or I will just show an image that you'll be able to use to paint along with me. Please subscribe, like if this content helped you, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to finish up this little piece of these leaves, which are kind of a different view. They're also wider. And if you notice it, they're kind of a little blotchy, but they're darker on the top and go down to more of a lighter green. So I'm going to, this is warmer colors with some dark. So I'm going to go back to um, my olive green. Now, if you're going to mix that, you would take your warm yellow and your warm blue, and you can see that value. Now, it does look a little bit deeper on the screen, so let's add some more warm yellow so you can see it. See it maybe the light. If I bring it in more of the light, you can see the color. Let's just really make that more yellow. So either way you want to do it um, is fine. And I'll probably use a little bit of both. So I did kind of indicate a little bit these. So what I'm going to do is maybe draw them a little bit because it's hard for me to actually see right now. Now it's easier to paint during the day, you know that. So I'm pulling it down and I'm going to add some more, maybe some yellow and pull that up. It's this one's actually a little bit darker. It's one of the mixes we used. So I'm just kind of pulling it up to the top and letting, now it will get darker. So let's take some warm blue, which is my ultramarine. And so I'm kind of dropping in a little more wet on wet. The paper's wet. But if it gets too wet, blot, have your paper towel. Or I didn't get to show this, but this is little elastic socks that you can also, so if you don't want to use paper towels, you certainly don't have to. So this one is, let's see, kind of flat. And then it has a different kind of green on the top. So need to get darker. So it really helps when you start seeing different things. But if you're a beginner, it's a great place to start and take your yellows and your blues and mix all your yellows with your blues and make a chart. And if you do want more information, go to my website. I have a wonderful class. It's my signature class. And it has all kinds of videos for you to do uh, projects and study and get better at your painting. It's called Watercolors with 6 tubes. And I made a video because I was asked about it, and hopefully I'll be able to put some more videos out for you to learn painting and different skills. So I'm varying the greens so I can kind of see the shapes. And I'm just taking what's on my palette. There is a big dark leaf here. So let's get this one to be a little bit darker. So on this one, it's more cool colors. And if it's too bright, sometimes what I'll do is I'll add a little bit of red and it dulls it. So that's pretty good. And since we weren't too fussy about the rats, I have to try and be, not fussy here because it won't look right if I start getting too fussy in the rest of the painting. Let's see, has a nice kind of lip to it. Little variation of color. And honestly, I'm just taking off of my palette. If I was doing a flower and wanted it to be more detailed and exact, I would try and match up the colors much more than I'm doing on this page. Like if you think of the zucchini video, um, much more exacting. So this has a little bit, that might be a little too dark. So I'm going to add some water and blot it and soften it. It's a little too blue green. And then what happens, because I'm, you know, do I have these colors? So just, lift it up and you could drop it in just to make that harmony of the piece. And then let's put some of that green maybe in the dirt too. It's a nice change with some Payne's gray because it is dark. And then if you wanted to, this piece is hard because I traced it, but if you have a clean image and it's wet, you can lift out, um, if you see any colors, or you can also use gouache on top when it dries, which I might do. So let's see. So these colors were, quite different than the other ones we use. So maybe pull some of those colors in it. So you have some kind of harmony. There we go. So I think we have this suite, and what I do like is putting, before I forget, um, I didn't trace them, but right on top here, let me use my brush. Um, and I'm going a little bit deeper, but kind of like those little petals sticking out. And maybe when it dries, I'll put the white on top of it. Let's see. So mine kind of ran, so I'm going to take that flat shader and kind of clean up. So it's just clean water. See how good. I'll probably turn it around. Um, let's put I'm just gonna mix up some more color here and just maybe drop it in to make it to pop a little bit more. I mean, you can add whatever you want. Um, take some of the red and add it, so we could go back to these leaves under here with a little bit of red. Guess they were much higher. Now, careful because it's like turning into mud, but it really popped that. Um, I want to really make this edge a little better. So see, this is what it happens when, if you're in your uh, nature journal, like you can't scrub it as much as you can watercolor paper. So be careful. But I really do like, I have so many of these notebooks. And a lot of times you might have seen I do it on the gray notebooks too. So this leaf is kind of going to come right up to this. Can't really see it. There's some white edges. So yeah, look at it. See what you see. So that's the best is, what do you see? Um, really notice. It's good, it's great for nature journaling, but for artists, we need to know what we're seeing too. Soften that. Sometimes it's just cleaning up a line that helps it come together. Now I can correct this is more of a different line. So it's got some texture. Um, so this really needs it's really more olive green. but it's much darker. But if it's so dark it doesn't fit in, and that's no good either. So either you have to add it or, lighten it or change it that way. So I hope you've enjoyed this. And I will see you next time with more from the Whole Seed catalog. I'm calling this Summer Watch, and I hope you'll join me again. Thank you.